Hello, everybody. Thank you for those of you who are tuning in or watching this later for a behind the scenes conversation about Dracula by Kate Hamill, directed by Jennifer Pennington. I'm Emily Tarquin. I use they, them pronouns, and I serve as the artistic producer and employee advocate for Actors Theater of Louisville, where this production is taking place, and also the casting director for Dracula itself. And I just want to share a little bit about Actors Theater. Uh, One is that we are committed to the ongoing healing, wellness, and full flourishing of the communities we serve. And we also acknowledge that the spaces we occupy are on the unceded land of many Indigenous communities, many who have been erased by our history, but include Shawnee, Eastern Band of the Cherokee, Chickasaw, and Osage people, and also lift up and recognize the collective struggle between Indigenous, Black, and Brown people in North America, and want to honor the Black labor and lives lost over the centuries that has made our current society possible. And of course, I also want to share who's in the room. So, joining tonight are some of the fabulous cast and creative team from Dracula, along with our executive artistic director, Robert Barry Fleming. And we are seeking to have an exciting conversation about a glimpse. You know, you're getting behind the scenes, you're not getting the full scene, okay, but a glimpse into this production and this process. And so let's just start by doing a round of introductions, which I know can be weird online. So I'll pass it to somebody and then you pass it to somebody else. But if we could share name, pronoun, your role, and then what you're excited about for Dracula or what drew you to work on this production. And if I can, I'll pass to you, Lashandra.
Hello, I'm Lashandra Hood. I'm taking on the role of Dr. Van Helsing. Something I'm super excited about in this show, specifically in my track, is the stage combat. I haven't been able to really take on stage combat in quite a while. So just the intense fighting scenes, it's the same thing that I get excited about in movies. So I'm really excited about that. I'll pass it to Joy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joy Linsetta Cornell. I'm the voice and dialect coach for Dracula, and my pronouns are she, her. And I think what really drew me to this project was, I had a first conversation with Emily right before I was asked to be on this production. And I think that just that conversation alone was really inspiring, but also learning who the creatives were, who was involved, and the casting of it. In addition to the script, it just all seemed like a really good recipe for something exciting. So I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to pass it over to Robert.
Hey, I'm Robert Barry Fleming. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm the executive artistic director of Actors Theater of Louisville. And man, what's not to be excited about? Look at this remarkable group of artists and creatives. Kate Hamill's magnificent classic reinvestigation of this amazing story. And that we get to offer almost a world premiere of this piece. It's only been seen one other time anywhere. And it's going to have such its own distinct voice here at Actors. And we know how Louisvillians and folks love Dracula here. So just thrilled about this opportunity to be able to share this remarkable work. So I'll just turn it over to Miss Hazel Jade.
Thank you. My name is Miss Hazel Jade. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm the dramaturg for this production. And I think what I was most excited about when I joined was a conversation with Emily and then with Robert, just about the passion behind the piece and how we got to explore intersectionality within this production.
And last but not least.
Yes, it's me now. I'm Abigail Bailey Maupin. I use she, her pronouns. I'm playing Renfield, and that's part of what I'm really excited about. I believe I'm the first female Renfield at Actors. And I I love how Kate has written her into the play. It's pretty amazing, but we'll probably talk about that.
Yes, we will.
Back to you,
Yes.
Emily.
All right, thank you all so much. Yes, certainly the retelling of Dracula is a longstanding tradition at Actors Theater of Louisville, and we've produced several versions over the years. And we see it as an integral part of our storytelling revolution. And so, Robert, I'm going to turn the first question to you, which is, what was the inspiration for this particular adaptation and continuing to tell this story?
Well, we're really committed to new work, but also a reinvestigation of classic work, because enduring stories always have something that's kind of existentially true about the human experience. And each time that is getting to revisit those stories through history, human history, gets to be a place where we get to know ourselves a little bit better. And I have been long admiring of Kate Hamill's work because she's been on that kind of project with other work with Jane Austen and other great writers. And I was really, really excited when I heard she was doing this particular production, and that CSC, a really great theater in New York, had invested in world premiering it. And when I came to Actors, one of the hallmarks of the theater is this community's great, rich connection with that particular story, and the joy and fun of telling scary stories, and stories that are full of really shadow parts of who we are, and getting to investigate what that's about, just like we get to also see the lighter parts of ourselves. And the sense of this binary of good and evil was getting investigated at Actors through this story in such really nuanced and exciting ways. It's always been an iterative project at Actors, always investigating, always refining the work, always being in curiosity about how we could share such a classic story, but keep learning more and more about ourselves, our community. And, it's just seemed inevitable that we would ultimately arrive at something as exciting as this particular adaptation, because of all the great creative minds around it. And it's super exciting to be able to have this group investigating that story as it resonates today. There's a lot going on in the country, and there's a lot that this show continues to investigate around gender roles, around violence, around hope. And so I'm just really excited that we get the chance to share this story live in person at the theater yet again, and have all the new excitement of what we're doing now with it.
Yes, here. Excitement all around. Okay, so now I want to open it up to the full group, and just want you all to share what interested you about this adaptation, and more broadly, why do you think it's important to reimagine the classics and address the past in new ways and evolving them to resonate more in the present? So it was really like 3 questions as one, but just sharing, what's intriguing about this, and also sharing about the reimagination and reinvention.
Well, I'll start, and I'll be pretty brief. Something that I appreciate about the script is the agency that the women have in the script, where they just have ownership over their lives and their choices. And they really go on a journey. I appreciate that they don't have to be damsels in distress waiting for someone to come and save them. I appreciate that. Some of the classics, I think, tend to rescue women a lot, or they are forgotten and they don't have a whole arc. They just kind of stay the same, or But I appreciate that the women in this show are thoroughly fleshed out, that you see a journey with each of them. I appreciate that, and it's something that sticks out. And I think as far as the classics go, I think there will always be a love and appreciation to some degree of the classics. However, as we know better, I think we ought to do better. And as artists, we have a job to create art that reflects the world and the world we live in as we live in it. But not just to reflect it, but I think we also have a duty to teach through the arts. I think it should be edutainment, right? You go to the theater because you think it's fun and we're going to enjoy ourselves. But I think the best art challenges your way of thinking. It challenges some thought. It goes against the grain. It brings something to light, and it's something that I truly appreciate about being an artist. But also being able to revive characters that we already know and already love. You've already are intimate with those characters, so it just makes you want to see the show more, to see what that new journey is for that character. So I think classics should be updated because life continues to evolve. We continue to evolve as people. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
Well said. Joy, Abigail, Miss Hazel.
Abigail, do you want to take it first?
Yeah, I'll say something. I totally agree with everything you just said, Lashandra. But I like building on the idea of damsels in distress. I think one of the things I'm enjoying about Renfield is that she probably has the least agency of anyone in the play. And yet she still does have an arc of attempting to be true to herself and attempting to find her way. And one of the things I really enjoy about Kate's version of this story is that she has filled it with women. And I spend a lot of my time doing Shakespeare, which is 12 to 14 male characters and 2 female characters. And you end up feeling like you're having to represent all women in those 2 characters. And I feel like because we have so many women in this one, that we are more free to say, well, no, Renfield is very flawed. So is Van Helsing. So is Mina. So is Lucy. Everybody is an actual human, and we all have different arcs, and we all have different weaknesses and strengths. And we get to see all of these female characters at different stages of their personal awakenings and their own personal attempts to live their lives their way. I really love that about this play.
And I'll build on top of that just a bit. I think one of the things that most excited me when Em brought me this project is I was able to see the breakdown that was in the script, but then to look at the actual casting of this company was, I think, pivotal for me, because you got to see a Black woman take the lead of the show, first of all, but also every woman in this show liberates themselves in a sense, even if they need that extra nudge to liberate themselves. They all find a way to find their own sense of self. So that was one of the things that most interested me. But I also think that I love that every woman in this show is of a different experience. There are no 2 women that are alike. You've got Black women, you've got brown women, you've got older women, you've got younger women. I think all of us together kind of make the world, and fuck men.
I'm just I think everybody spoke so well about this production. It's making me more excited. But I think just even on an entertainment level, I think that audiences are just going to be, their senses are just going to be tickled. There's going to be new everything, new energies, new fight combat, is exciting combat. There's going to be amazing music and projections, not to give away too much, but I just think that this experience is going to be very different. And I think Louisville audiences, after the past couple of years in the pandemic, I think are going to be really well prepared and excited to see all of these new changes and this new storytelling, which still keeps the same themes, but adds more to it. So I think it's just the perfect time for it.
Thank you all. These are really beautiful answers. And it is a really wonderful group of people to get to work with. So we are all fortunate in that way. Okay, so I know it's still early in the process, but for those of you who've been in the room, what out of all that you just shared, how is that showing up in the rehearsal space? How is it resonating, as the rehearsals are evolving?
I'll just jump in quickly. I think it's interesting because I've had one-on-one sessions with each actor, and what I love about it is that each of them are coming in with fresh eyes, as though they've never heard of Dracula before, they've never heard of Amina before, but they truly are coming in with a fresh set of eyes and really looking deeply into the character beyond the stereotypes or sort of the broad version of how we've seen and heard about their stories. And so the conversations that I'm having with actors right now, I think is just so exciting because it shows the level of commitment that each actor has to really delve into these characters and see them as human beings and allow parts of themselves into the characters as well. So it isn't this sort of like a caricature of a person. It is truly these very unique individuals all coming together. And so I think that'll be really exciting because it's just going to bring this really unique dynamic on stage.
Other thoughts, Abigail?
I know, and I don't want this to sound like anything bad about Nick and Justin and Mark because they are lovely and I'm really enjoying working with them. But haven't we all worked on a show where the room felt very testosterone heavy and a little bit boys clubby, and being in a room with so many women is kind of novel and really lovely. I feel this sort of immediate sisterhood and trust that you don't always get in the first week of rehearsals. And I don't know if that's because we're a bunch of gals working on a play or if that's just this particular group of people. But it is play where you need to trust each other, and you need to trust each other pretty quickly. And I do feel that in the room. So
100%. I'll add on to that in the sense that it's fun. And I think Abigail would agree that the idea that you can get paid to play and just throw everything at the wall. I think one of the things about doing a classic for me as a dramaturg is always looking at the stories that we know, but throwing everything at it to try to reflect our world as it is now, and coming back post-pandemic to works that we've already known, works that we anticipated telling before the pandemic. I think we have a sense of perspective that community is important right now, and finding community in ourselves as women is very, I will say that for myself as a Black woman in theater, is very, very different than the sense of feminism that we left before the pandemic with. And I really love that in this room now.
Yes, exactly. I'm going to go ahead and share a question that has come in from the audience. Okay. Oh. So you should see it there. Dumb question. No, it's not. But how do we decide what aspects of the classics to maintain? And a shout out that it looks like it's great. It will be a great show. Anyone want to chime in and answer that?
I will start dramaturgically. When we look at reviving classics or even reinterpreting classics, I think you start always from the base of what is the story. You bring it in with a group of performers, brilliant performers like we have here, who make smart decisions and smart choices, and kind of just workshop and play. I think the more that we hear it in different voices, it allows us to see what works and what doesn't. And for this piece in particular, I think sticking with the core story that everyone knows and then just trying new things out as far as the way that we get to the end point of the story. She did a really good job. Kate did a really good job at getting us to that final place with everything that we already knew.
I'll just offer, as somebody whose graduate training was really focused on Shakespeare, the thing that I just always loved about Shakespeare was the sense of, he was pretty relentless in utilizing other sources and being informed by other sources. There was no sense of like, oh, I have to come up with something original. Although people are like, he's the greatest writer, and the canon contains all of humanity. And I think the ironic thing is, like, there's just no original sources. Everything's based on a previous story. And I think that's so true about so much in life, that what is new is how things are brought together. And it's deep. It's really about deep curiosity and investigating how things you've heard before, how you've been shaped, the ideologies that shape how you understand yourself in the world, are all based on stories, and they're all based on previous stories intersecting with your own lived experience that's also shaped by those stories. And there's nothing for me more fun as I'm headed towards my 60s than to have decade after decade of new discoveries about who I am in the world, who my fellow human beings are, and endlessly learning and having the human comedy of what you thought you knew, and what you thought was a novel idea. Like, for someone else, it's like, oh, that's really, here's what resonates for me today. I'm the generation who's like, ooh, the Gary Oldman Dracula is the new edgy cool one. And so many people are like, oh yeah, there's so many problems with that movie, I can't even begin to tell you. Let me start with this one. And it's so fun to hear someone's, offer a new perspective about things that, just even my sense of the time-space continuum is like, when did Kevin Kline become somebody's grandfather and not a leading man? It's like a joke of like how quickly those things evolve. So that's the thing I love about the classics. It's that it humbles when you approach it with curiosity, because you don't make decisions about what you keep or you don't keep any more than you decide how life is going to go. You just encounter things that pique your curiosity, and you learn from them if you're open to being guided by the universe, God, the wise, incredible human beings that are around you. There's so many cues, and the classics for me are just another cue to say, yeah, let's go for it. Let's keep learning about ourselves until we transition to whatever's next.
Yes. And and it's obvious that this story, that classic stories are still resonating for us, that we are still seeking to tell them and to explore them. And I think there's also the aspects that are less resonant. And some of those we have named. I think there's gender dynamics. I think there's racial dynamics that, we want to investigate in the world that we lived in now, sharing our social locations, sharing our lived experience, letting that breathe life into the work, and obviously into the roles you all are playing and contributing in. Okay, so I'll throw out the next question. And Kate Hamill, playwright, who we've talked about, is bringing a really deft mix of horror and humor to this story. And a key element, of course, is the use of dialects. And so, Joy, I would just love to hear from you of, how you're approaching this aspect of the work.
Yeah. So I'm really excited for this project in particular because there's sort of this very explicit understanding that each actor is bringing a part of themselves to these characters. And so the varying identities of these actors are being acknowledged, which is something that you don't always quite get in a rehearsal space. So for me, this is really liberating, and this is a really exciting experience. And so with that, I'm really excited for audiences to hear this sort of melting pot of sounds in the show, because my approach to dialect work revolves around character work, dramaturgy behind it, and identities. And so it's really important to remember that dialect and voice work is character work. It is part of the holistic process of trying to embody the character. And so a lot of the early work that we do is not about, well, here's the vowels and consonants, and here's the IPA and all of this technical stuff. The first couple of meets I have with these actors are, what makes that person speak the way that they do? What is their language? What are their languages, their cultures, their education, social status, identities, all of those influences that make them speak the way that they do. And so for me, that's a really nuanced approach. We even talk about how some of their personality traits can manifest in their voice and the way that they speak. And so it's a really exciting creative process. And I think somebody had mentioned earlier how, I think it was Ms. Hazel talking about how we're all being just really creative right now, and so that's really freeing. And so for this particular show, as we all have discussed, the actors have varying identities, and so we have a lot of those conversations. So, for an example, Mina, the character Mina, is played by the wonderful Lipika Shah, and we discussed how a woman who looks like her would exist in the late 19th century England. And we made some really strong choices on Mina's background. And with Lipika's parents having a Bengali background, it's something that she is going to include into her work. And how that's going to turn out, we don't know yet. But it is something that we are talking about in the dialect sessions. So for me, dialect is really beyond sound. It is really delving into who these people are and how their experiences and their environments influence how they speak, whether it's situational, emotional, all of those things.
Yeah, so grateful for you, Joy. Before I met you, I did not think of this, but when I was in college, none of us had a similar dialect. But the minute we were learning English or whatever, we're all trying to speak the same. And I didn't even think twice about it. And of course, that would never be accurate on any journeys you go on, that everyone is using the same dialect. So, but in addition to you incorporating the full humanity in it is really exciting. Okay, so we're going to end on this last question. And it's okay to give a little bit of spoilers. But what are you all most excited for audiences to experience? Why should they come? Why should they get online right now and get a ticket to see this? I feel like we've named it, but if you would share more of what are you excited for people to see?
I'm gonna steal Lashandra's answer. I'm very excited for people to see Lashandra fighting on stage. She's such a badass. It's so amazing to see.
Just really excited to not only just see a good play with good actors, but also just the creatives and the design that go into it, of all of the moving pieces going together, the costumes, the sound, the lighting, the sets, props, everything. It's just the production meetings that we've even had over the course of time have been just these little like we're just throwing ideas down on the table. And I think it's going to be a really exciting time for people to not only see this new interpretation, but also to just kind of get a new taste of the story and see it with a different lens and see it through a different perspective. So almost treat it like you're just seeing a brand new play.
For me, I am excited for the audiences to have the whole experience. I agree with Joy in the sense that it's all of the elements that will come together to make this spectacular production that I'm really excited about. Good theater is one thing, but when you go to have an experience, you just want to come every time, every night.
I will second all three of those those comments that the three of you made. And we've been talking so much about the women, but I'm going to say that I'm excited for the audience to see Nick's Dracula, because he's not like other Draculas I've seen. He's very charming and very funny, and I think that makes him a little scarier. And I'm excited about that.
There's very little to add other than to say you can listen to these brilliant women and understand why there is such excitement for this event. Come on out, get your ticket. It's going to be a great time.
It really is. Thank you all so much. I'm excited to continue in the process. I'm excited when we get to opening night and sharing it with audiences. Just thank you so much for your contribution. And thank you to all of you who tuned in with us and are watching. And we hope to see you in the Bingham Theater for Dracula. All right, good night, y'all.